So I'm sure most people know your computer thinks in ones and zeros, but what does that mean? So those are information bits. Each transistor in your computer is coding a yes or no question. It's coding a 1 or 0, and what that means is the transistor at a positive voltage or at 0 volts? Your computer basically does all of its computations very fast, but they're all, at the end of the day, yes or no questions. And that's the information. So if you have a music file, which is like 3 megabytes, every byte is 8 yes or no questions. So every byte of data is 8 bits. So 8 ones or zeros or some combinations of them. So when you have a 3 megabyte file of music, what that means is that you need 3 million times 8, so 24 million yes or no questions to describe this song.
Holy shit.
So
that's literally what's happening for me to play a Spotify song.
Yeah, so on your
phone.
your computer doesn't hear the song. Your computer doesn't have ears. It doesn't know what the song is. All it knows is that I need to put these certain bits in my hard drive at 1 or 0, and that will perfectly describe the song when I say send it to a friend or send it over the radio or play it in your earphones.
That's fucking wild. Yes, John Conway's Game of Life. So there are 2 update states, like Jordan said, either active or inactive, alive or dead, whatever you want to call it, white or black, and 4 rules in the Game of Life. So before I get to those 4 rules, the universe of the Game of Life is an infinite, 2-dimensional, orthogonal grid of square cells, each of which is in one of 2 possible states, like I mentioned, alive or dead. Every cell interacts with its 8 neighbors, which are the cells that are horizontally, vertically, and diagonally adjacent. At each step in time, the following transitions occur. Those transitions are the rules. So rule number 1. If a state is alive and less than 2 of its neighbors are alive, it dies of loneliness. Rule number 2. If a cell is alive and more than 3 of its neighbors are alive, it dies of overcrowding. So anytime it dies, it changes states to the other color. Rule number 3. If a cell is alive and 2 or 3 of its neighbors are alive, it stays alive. So it remains that color. Rule number 4. If a cell is dead and exactly 3 of its neighbors are alive, it becomes alive, changes colors. Otherwise, it stays dead, remains the same color.
All you do with this Game of Life is you set the initial conditions, and by that I mean you turn some number of cells on. The glider is 5 alive squares that are self-sustaining. So if I set the glider to be on and I hit run, the glider will look, from my point of view, to be moving along the grid in a diagonal direction. I'm perceiving an object moving, but what's really happening is that the cells are stationary. So no cell is moving, but the pattern of information is moving
across
the grid. So the grid is fixed, the cells are fixed, the rules are fixed. So it's the pattern of this on and off information that's moving down the grid. So the glider is the most basic one, but then you can get all sorts of things. You can get spaceships. You can get spaceships that generate gliders, which are essentially like shooting off these gliders. You can think of gliders as information transfer. Like, for instance, like photons or light in our world can almost be analogous to those, where the glider can be how components on the grid communicate with one another. So this is just the first entity you might observe on the Game of Life, but Game of Life turns out to be extremely complex. The Game of Life is considered Turing complete. On the Game of Life, they've got in the Game of Life to build up on the grid the Game of Life. So it's the Game of Life within the Game of Life.
Are you adding more rules to do this? How is that
No,
possible?
it's the same rule set. It's just that you define the initial state and then you hit run.
That's wild that those 4 simple rules that we mentioned earlier can create any of that.
Yeah.